Hello everyone. This is Alex. It might sound a little different. Usually you have Warren on the call. Something came up with his schedule, and he asked me if I could fill in. So I had some time today, so I thought I'd jump on instead of rescheduling this call. So can you let me know if you guys can hear me? Okay, I can hear. I can see Paul's on the line. He said, "Hello, Alex. Nice to see you, Paul." Glenn says yes, awesome. And you guys see my screen all right with the Investment Dominator logo on it? All right, perfect. So yes, I kind of just jumped on here on the fly, so you're gonna have to put up with me and a little bit on this because I haven't done one of these calls in a while, but that's okay. Let's see, I get a little bit about myself. Probably, I guess some of you already know me. So basically, I just have worked for Jack for about 12, almost 13 years, I think now. I did create the Investment Dominator. We use it quite a bit, obviously, because I created it originally for personal use. Then we, kind of let our coaching students use it for a while, and then now it's kind of like open to everyone doing the land business. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm going to skip off. This is Warren, who typically does the call. He will be on the next call, which is on Monday. I want to get to this slide right here in case you're new to the GoToWebinar software here. This is a live call, so you can ask me any questions you want. I'm going to see them come through on our question box. I saw a lot of you guys' comments already saying that you can hear me, you can see me. So I see all these questions come in. Now, there's a couple of options here if you're not familiar with it. Basically, there's a question box, and it looks like I have these two arrows here, but the question box, you just type in your question, hit send, and then I see it. And I can already see somebody sent in some questions here. So how this call works is go ahead and send in your questions, and they kind of like stack up in here, and I just kind of answer as many as I can in the time period that we're doing this call. And then we just kind of go from there. So we already had a couple questions come in, and I'm going to start with those. That'll give you guys enough time to come up with any additional questions, and then we'll kind of go through that. So let's see. So the first question that we had got, and let me bring up my Investment Dominator test account here. Is somebody was asking earlier about the offers. Basically, when you generate documents, so the question is, how come sometimes you generate documents and there is less documents being generated than what you have selected, or less documents generated than, like, let's say the difference between the cover letter and the offer, right? Sometimes you might generate the cover letter and the offer, which are both part of the offer package here, but you'll see less cover letters than you will offers. So we had a question about that. Why is that the case? And there's a similar question as to why sometimes you generate your prospect letters and there's less prospect letters than there are prospects that you selected, or less than letters than what are in the prospect table there. So the answer to both of these are kind of similar. The generate documents section, first of all, let me back up. There's two generate document sections. One of them is what we call the bulk generate document section, which is this one up top. It's above the table. So it has nothing to do with anything that you select here. If I select 3 records down here, and then I go to any one of these options up at the top here, it has no bearing on these options because this is above the table. So I want to kind of clarify that. But if I select these, you'll notice that every time I select a record, there's a count. If I generate documents here, which is inside this table, then it does have to do with the options that I select, okay? So that's a kind of a big difference that sometimes people don't see that right off the bat, that there's two generate documents and they actually mean two different things. One is outside the table, one is inside the table, and only the options that are inside this area right here in the table have to do with what you select. So I want to make that clear. The other thing is when we go to the bulk generate documents, where this question usually originates from, the options here have a little bit more like functionality or intelligence going on than just, you know, selecting a certain number of people and creating letters. When it comes to the neutral letter, we're generating your neutral letters based off of how many records in your system are in the prospect status. So the number one thing is the records have to be in a prospect status. And that's how this is generated. The number two thing that happens is if an owner owns multiple properties, we actually only generate one letter for that person under this section. Again, if you're using the select generate documents, then this doesn't apply, but I'm right now under the bulk generate documents and that rule does apply. So that is the answer to why you would have, let's say, 1,000 prospect people that are in the prospect status, but you would only, let's say, have 900 letters in your mailing, because there's people in your mailing list that own multiple properties and we only want to send one letter to them. It's the same thing if you outsource this to a mail house. We're only sending them one record, you know, for the person that owns multiple properties. Okay. Now to go further down to the offer section, it also applies. So in a scenario, let's say where a person owns 3 different properties, and they request offers on all 3 properties, then we will only generate one cover letter for that package, let's say, right, for that person. And then we will generate 3 separate offer agreements. So that is the reason why you would have, let's say, like if you do it in bulk here, let's say that you have 20 offer agreements, but you only have 15 cover letters. That is the reason that some people own multiple properties. And so when you're kind of compiling these offer packages, is what we call them, then you just got to be aware of it. Like, you know, you look at the cover letter for person A, and then you look for the same offer agreements for those people, and then you just include it in one package. It's the same thing, by the way, if you're doing the Exhibit A's, that you would have multiple, you know, you would have one Exhibit A per property, one offer per property, but you would only have one cover letter. Okay, so I hope that answers that question and clarifies a few things about how the system works in terms of bulk things, because I know we have a lot of new users over the last few weeks, and that's one of the things that questions we get when you're not familiar with the system. So I wanted to address it in multiple ways. All right, so the other question we have, oops, I don't know what happened there. I don't know if you guys can see that on your screen, but my screen went blank. Hold on one second. Okay, give me a second, guys. I think it's fine on your end, but my screen went blank. Okay, fix that. All right, so the other question is, how do we use ID for putting electronic signatures in our contracts? Okay, so there was a discussion on Facebook the other day about this, and and I had posted you know, a comment on there that you can go from Investment Dominator to Zapier to DocuSign and a couple of other things. So and let's see, how do we use, oh, I think it got repeated a couple times. Okay, so the question was like a follow-up to some Facebook post about DocuSign. So for those of you that hadn't seen the post, I believe, if I remember right, there's a lot of stuff going on in the last couple of days, but if I remember right, the person was asking, they wanted to do digital contracts. In our system, you know, we send a physical contract. There's a good reason for it, and I think I did post that in the comment, and I want to make that clear here, is when we are acquiring property from the owner, we on purpose don't send them a digital agreement, because if you do a test where you send 1,000 people or 100 people a written, like physical copy of the contract in the mail, and you do 100 digital contracts in the mail, you will find that you are going to get a better acceptance rate from the physical ones that you send. And that is just because, and Jack explains this in different modules in the Land Profit Generator, but also on YouTube. You can see some of the videos about this. But basically, the reason behind that is that when somebody first gets your low offer, there is some people that just don't care about the property and they just accept it. So those are the people that would accept also a digital copy of the agreement. Those are a very small amount of people. There's another group of people that they're unsure. They don't want the property anymore, but they kind of have an idea of what is a fair price to them, or maybe they talk to their neighbor and they know their neighbor sold it for 10,000. Now they get your offer for $1,000. So they're initially put off by your offer, but at the same time, they don't want the property anymore and they don't want to pay another year's worth of taxes anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So if you send that person that represents a good chunk of these people, a digital agreement and just say, here's my offer, it's for $1,000, the chances of that person just replying and being like irate is very high, because they don't have, because it's digital, they don't have the time to think about it for a second. And that's the reason why we don't do it. Okay. Versus if you send it physically in the mail, they might be irate when they see it. It might be their first reaction. What then happens is they talk to their kids, they talk to people in their family, they think about it, and they're like, you know what? I've paid property taxes on this for years. I haven't done anything with it. So they reason with themselves, and then they basically accept your offer. Okay, so I want to make sure that when we're talking about digital documents and digital signatures, that everybody just doesn't go off and do digital offers, because you're going to get a very, very low acceptance rate on the acquisition side. Now, having said that, on the selling side, and I think I did post this on Facebook, on the selling side of things, when you own the property and now you're going to sell it to somebody else, digital signatures are awesome, because that person wants a quick agreement. So instead of sending them a physical agreement, like, oh, I'm going to mail you the agreement, you're going to sign it and send it back, and then I'll send it to my title company, and that's all like a week process, and the person's like really excited about buying your lot, that's where you want to look at putting digital signatures in place. Okay, so I know that's like a big backstory thing, but I wanted to make sure that the people that didn't see the post kind of understood where I'm coming at. Having said that, now if we're talking about creating digital signatures in the Investment Dominator, there's two additional things that you're going to need. So one is you're going to need to have a Zapier.com account. So Zapier.com, in case anybody is not familiar with this, if you go to Zapier.com, it's a service that simply connects one program with another. So you can connect Investment Dominator with another program, okay? Now that other program is the other thing that you're going to need. In this case, it's a digital document program like DocuSign, like HelloSign is another one, and there's esignatures.io is another one, which is I think the cheapest one out there. I haven't yet tested that, but I think I'm gonna, because we've done DocuSign and HelloSign, use those. I think DocuSign is the most expensive out of that. Then you got HelloSign, it's kind of like mid-level, and then you've got e-signatures, and I think that's the cheapest. So I've actually got it on my calendar to create an account and use that one, because that one's the best. But regardless of whatever service you use, let's just say DocuSign.com, and then we're gonna go. One thing I want to pull up here is a common question that I get here is, when you are signing up for a DocuSign account, you can't just use any account. You have to use an account that will integrate with at least Zapier. And so I think it's under pricing. API plans. Okay, I think if I remember right, you got to use at least this basic API account, and what that allows you to do is basically, let's see, how do I explain it? Like APIs allow you to send data back and forth between programs. Okay, so you got to have this plan because Zapier service is just a go-between to help you connect the two programs through APIs. So both programs that you're trying to connect through Zapier have to have APIs, if that makes sense. So the Investment Dominator already has an API built in. You don't have to have a special account for that. You already have that. But when it comes to DocuSign or HelloSign or eSignatures.io, which I think that one comes with it, but with DocuSign and HelloSign, you have to have their API plan so that Zapier can even do this connection. Okay, so that's one caveat that you got to be aware of. Sign. Let me go to HelloSign real quick, and I think I'll show you the plan that should work, which is sign up, solutions. Let's see here. No, products, pricing. I think it's under here. So what you're looking for is HelloSign API. Okay, so actually, according to this, DocuSign would be actually cheaper. I don't think that I think that's a recent change, because even if you get the lower one here, it's $99. So it used to be the other way around, that HelloSign was cheaper. So anyways, you got to sign up with one of these accounts, and you're going to create a Zapier account, and then now you're going to connect the Investment Dominator to Zapier, and you got to connect DocuSign to Zapier. So that's the thing. And I have on the user guide, because this is a kind of a longer tutorial, and I do see some more questions coming through, so I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit. But there is a tutorial on the user guide. It is this one right here, how to set up a API Zapier connection. Now, the only difference between this video and what you're doing in the DocuSign connection is that in this video here, I talk about connecting Investment Dominator with an emailing software, which is GetResponse. But what you're trying to do is connect Investment Dominator with DocuSign or HelloSign. The process of doing that connection is exactly the same. So if you watch the video here, the first, I don't know, 15 minutes that I'm talking about setting up that connection in Zapier, those steps are exactly the same. The only thing different is this second part of that, which is connecting it to DocuSign. What you want to do to get Investment Dominator connected to Zapier is you want to go to jackbosh.com/zap. Okay, jackbosh.com/zap. That redirects over to another place. Give it a second. And this basically pulls up the Investment Dominator Zap. Okay. So again, just reiterate, jackbosh.com/zap. It's going to redirect you to this link here. And this is going to have the Investment Dominator logo. You're going to then say, how do you want this triggered? Okay. And you think about triggers as in, like, what is the action in the Investment Dominator that needs to happen for you to generate a brand new sale agreement in that case? So if you think about, if we go over here to a buyer's list, and we think, and you know, because if we're talking about the selling contract, it's going to be generated off of a person in the buyer's list. So if we go over here and we're creating a new person, we're going to create a new contact here, and that contact is going to be a buyer. This action of us saving a buyer in here should be the trigger to create the document, if that makes sense. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to base it off of the your land deals, etc. Your land deals deal flow process. So for example, if you go and click on one of these deals here, the property needs to move through all of these statuses, and you can say, okay, when I found a buyer, so when the record turns into found buyer open escrow, then that's going to trigger the Zapier app to run. Does that make sense? So your trigger is just what event in the Investment Dominator will trigger the actual document. So if we go over here, you're going to go new, we'll say updated, a record is updated, and you have to connect your Investment Dominator account, and that is super easy. That's covered in that video, but I'll just show you real quick. You hit connect account here, and then it brings up this little screen here, and it asks you for your API key and your app URL. That can be found in your Investment Dominator under your profile section, and it's going to be under at the bottom where it says API credentials, and then you're going to just copy in, copy in that URL. In this case, this is the URL, so you copy in the URL here, and then you do the API key. All right, and then you can connect it, and then it connects the Investment Dominator to Zapier, and you can run a test. Okay, and for those of you that are technical there, I will reset the key after this presentation, so don't worry about that. But so now what you've got essentially is you've connected the Investment Dominator to Zapier, and then you move on to the next step. It's kind of like a wizard. You just go save and continue, and then just kind of walk through to the next step. So then here, what we're going to do is we're going to choose a land deal, right, from the land tab, like we were talking about. Okay, and then we're going to go over here and choose the status. Let's see here, as going to be not all of them will load. See over here. Let's enter in another choice. Clear custom value. Okay, use a custom value. Because I don't see the status in here. These are actually the stages. Let's see, the custom status is selling. So we're actually going to do selling right here, selling land. Okay, so we've got a land deal in the selling stage, which is this one right here. Okay, when a property moves over there. And then you just hit continue and go to the next thing. So it actually pulls a record for you. So you can see it pulls 3 records just so you can see what it if it's connected, right? So this is actually pulling from my Investment Dominator account right now. So you can just kind of look through that. It looks good. You can compare, for example, these records with your records in the Investment Dominator, so you know that it's connecting properly. And then you go to the next step. All right, so this is the part where you're connecting DocuSign or HelloSign. So you're searching for the other app. So in this case, it's going to be DocuSign, which is right here. It's not available. I think it's because I don't actually have the account loaded into this Zap. But this would be the DocuSign app. Let me look at HelloSign. Okay, so for HelloSign, I can add that one. So now we've connected. If you can see on the left-hand side, there's like a summary of how the setup works. So you're connected Investment Dominator to HelloSign, and then you can see here you're sending them a template. Okay. Now, if I hit continue here, it's going to ask me to connect my HelloSign account here, which I don't have a demo HelloSign account that I can just do right now on the fly. So I'm going to have to leave the tutorial at that. But essentially, it's going to ask you for the same exact thing that it asked for the Investment Dominator, which is your HelloSign username and your HelloSign password. Okay. Then when you load that, you'll be able to choose one of your templates, your HelloSign contract templates. Okay. And then just to kind of like wrap this thing up, what Zapier is doing, what this integration is doing is when somebody moves into that selling status, the data, the name of the person, the email of the person, that's buying the property, all that, the APN of the property, the legal description of the property, all that information that's saved in Investment Dominator in that record on all these fields right here are then transferred over to HelloSign to be put into your template. Okay, so that's that. And the beauty of Zapier, it might sound like it's a lot of work right here, and it's because you're setting up this trigger, right? So that does take some time to set up, but once it's set up, it runs automatically. So the next time you have a new property, you just move it into the right status, and when it moves into that status, the information that's saved in the Investment Dominator gets pushed out to HelloSign, automatically sending out the person's contract, and then they can just, you know, sign up that. And as you can, so we probably will get some follow-up questions for that. I'm gonna leave it at that for a second, but one thing I wanna say, because not everybody wants to do, you know, from Investment Dominator to a signature. One thing I wanna bring up, if you're not aware, is that Zapier has over 1,500 apps that it will connect to. So you can connect Investment Dominator to Google Sheets, you can connect it to Google Calendar, to Facebook, to MailChimp, which is an emailing program. I mean, there's just like 1,500 of them. So you can just search, you can integrate it with your QuickBooks, things like that. So, but again, when I say integrated, what I'm saying is you're transferring data from Investment Dominator based on a trigger event automatically to another third-party software. All right, and so that's the beauty of it. We actually use that in, for example, our email marketing campaigns. So when a person, let me go over here. So when a person, the way that we use it quite a bit is in our buyers list. When somebody, for example, is just a prospect, they are sent to an email marketing campaign to send out some marketing emails for prospects. But when they turn into a buyer, they get removed off that campaign and put on another campaign. But the email sequences themselves, that's handled by an emailing software like GetResponse or Constant Contact or things like that. And the way that we send data back and forth is either through the API, or if we want to be really easy about it and not have to code anything, then we just use Zapier to do that exact same thing. All right, so hopefully I didn't confuse you guys too much, but let me see what the questions we've got. See here, duplicate, eliminate that time matches, where you got. Okay, so Paul, let's see, you're asking, does the duplicate record eliminator eliminate only exact name matches or exact name and address matches? Okay, this is a good question, because this is something that I kind of get the different form of this question quite a bit. And what Paul's talking about is, how does the system determine when you're importing a new list from the county or from wherever? How does it determine whether it's a duplicate record or not? I'm sure you guys all have, you know, if we go to the import, and let me see if I can pull up a list over here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to grab something. Okay, files. Oops. I'm gonna grab a list here that I know has some duplicates in it. Okay, so I'm gonna import this list. So in the background, there's a lot of things going on here. Oh, this one doesn't have any duplicates. Let me go back here. Let's see. Import. Let me try to find tags, updates. Maybe this one does. Okay. Yes, this one has a little bit of duplicate. So after you import a file, you're going to see a summary of what happened in the file. And Paul's question is like, how does the system determine duplicates? And there's actually two checks that are happening, okay? So the first check is to determine if the property itself is a duplicate in your list. And so we are checking 3 fields for that, a combination of 3 fields. It's the APN of the property, the county of the property, and the state of the property. And we check those 3 fields simultaneously. And the reason is because you can have duplicate APNs across counties. Like you could be in county A and county B, and you could have a property in each with the same APN number, because APN numbers are not like social security numbers where they're unique to the property in the United States. They're only unique to the property in that county. Okay, so the first check that we do is we determine if it's if there's a unique property, or if any of if that combination of the APN, the property state, and the property county match. If a record matches those 3 criteria, then it's kicked out as a duplicate property or an existing property. Okay, and it's actually, you'll see that it wouldn't be added. Like in this case, 10 records were not added because they exist in the system already. Okay, so that's the number 1 check, and it determined that we're not importing anything new, so it's not going to import it. Okay, now the second check, which is kind of more what you're talking about, which is based on the owner, is and to specifically answer your question, you mentioned in there that, you know, do we look for the owner's name? We don't even check the owner's name. We only look for the combination of the address, the city, state, and zip of the owner. Okay, so in your import sheet you have address, city, state, and zip fields. That's what we're checking. If any of those combinations match, then we determine it is a duplicate owner. And by the way, while let's see, have you guys here, I can actually show you what I'm talking about here. As far as like, if you want to verify what I'm saying outside of the Investment Dominator, you can just take a look at your list that you have, and you can run these exact checks. But again, Paul, to answer your question, the first name and last field name, we don't even check because there's many John Smiths in a list, for example, and so we don't even factor that in. But here's the first check. If you want to do it in Excel, you go up here to data, and then you just go here to I think it's, let's see, home. Where is it under? View? No, thought it was under data. See, text to columns, advanced. Not in this thing. Oh, I think, give me a second here. I think it's my view, because I'm on a so smaller screen over here. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, so that's the reason. It is under data. It's just hidden from here. Let me move it over to this screen first. Okay, there's a, you won't be able to see this, well, let me switch my screens real quick. Sorry, guys. That's what happens when we're live. Screen 1. Okay. Switching my screen over. All right, so here's what I did. I have a list. I'm going to go here to data, and then I'm going to go to remove duplicates, okay? And then it pops up with this little dialog. So now you're going to unselect everything, and if you want to do the property check that we do, it's APN, property, state, and county. Only those 3 should be selected for that. And then you run that, and it says there's no duplicate values there. Now, the other one is you go remove duplicates, and then you go to the address. Let me make this bigger. Address, city, state, zip, okay? Those are the only 4 fields you should select in, and that will give you the exact check that we do for the owner. And that one has no duplicate found. So you can do that in Excel prior to even importing it into the Investment Dominator, just to verify what I'm saying, because those are the fields that we check for. All right, now let me switch this back over. And give me a second here. Hopefully that answered your question, Paul. If not, send in a second response. All right, so let's see. Can you explain what happens when you import a newly updated and filtered list from a county that you have imported into the ID in the past, being that the filter may be different information from the first import? Okay, that's a good question, Caesar. Yes, let me go over here. If let's see, let's go back to the import section. And basically here, probably, let's see, a few months ago, we added these options right here, where you could change from creating to updating. So these do play in a factor in your question here. But what I want to say is, if you don't change any of these options and you're just using the default, what happens in the scenario where you import a list of properties that you've already imported in the past, then you're going to get an error, not an error, but you're going to get a screen similar to the one I just did, which I had, which is I had already imported this list right here. So now I'm going to re-import. So the properties in this list are already in my Investment Dominator, and I think that's what you're saying there. Now I'm going to re-import that list, and when I do that, the system is going to say that those properties already exist in the system. So it actually did not re-import them. It just basically rejected it because it says it's already in there. It's not going to create a duplicate in the system. Okay. Now, this brings up another question, though. The other question, follow-up question would be, and I don't know if anybody has it, but the other follow-up question is, how do you manage to get the information, updated information? For example, if you're doing blind offers or a second mailing and you want to import that, but you want to update records that already exist in the system. Or a more common scenario is that you want to you have a bunch of people that you skip traced, right? So originally you had them in the system. They had bad email addresses, or sorry, they had bad mailing addresses. You mailed out to them, you got a letter back, and then it bounced back to you. So basically you're going to add those to the skip trace list. And when you export those skip trace people and you send them to a service like batch skiptracing.com, for example, then they're going to send you a list of their new addresses, right? Now, the question is, how do you get those new addresses into the system when you've already loaded those exact same, at least, properties in the system? The answer to that is that's where these new options come in. You're going to be updating existing records in that case. So this is a kind of like a more advanced thing that you're doing, is that you're, instead of creating or importing new people into the system, which it will reject in that scenario where the APNs match, you're going to be choosing the update existing records option. And then the other thing that you want to do is decide what status to move these into. So if it's a scenario like a skip trace, then you definitely want to move them into the prospect status after you update them, right? Because if you think about that scenario, you've got, let's say, 50 people under the skip trace status. You exported that, sent it to your skip tracer. They now gave you a list of those 50 people back. Now you're going to import them as update existing records. But instead of not changing the status from skip trace, you want to tell the system to change it to prospect. So that's going to take the 50 people out of your skip tracing list in Investment Dominator and put them back into your prospect list so that they are included in your next mailing. I hope that makes sense. So these factors do play into account if you want to update records versus create. And if you leave everything by default, again, it's just going to reject it like it did in this sample that I sent you, because it already saw that there was records that existed with the same APNs in there. All right, so Paul had a follow-up question to the DocuSign thing that I was talking about. So if you pay DocuSign an account for getting electronic signatures and the basic API, having a monthly subscription fee, how do you stop getting fake buyers? Getting fake buyers. I'm not sure. How do you stop getting fake buyers? Oh no, that's, oh sorry, this that's my bad. That's two separate questions. All right, so I was confusing myself. Um, no, each having a subscription fee. Okay, Paul, to answer your question, you on DocuSign and HelloSign, as far as I know, and again, these are third-party services. As long as you pay for this service right here, you get a certain amount of signatures. Let's see. I did see it on the HelloSign one at least. See, you get 50 of them, right? So for $99 a month, you can basically, if you're doing it on the selling side, you can get 50 selling contracts, which is well worth it because every time you sell a property, you're probably making, you know, five to $10,000. That's a justifiable price. But that should be the number. Now on DocuSign, it's unlimited template. So yeah, I think it's unlimited in that case. As however many you send over there is included in that $50 a month. So I guess hopefully that answers your question. All right, the other question that I got confused with, it's a separate question, is how do you stop getting fake buyers? I'm not quite sure what you mean, Caesar, with fake buyers. I'm assuming that you mean people that are uh, reaching out to you on your marketing and saying that they're interested, but they're really not. Maybe they're tire kickers. Maybe is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about that you're getting a lot of data in your system that are not real, like bot data, basically? So maybe you can send in a follow up. Okay, no fake buyers in the ID. Yes. Okay. Okay. So I think you're talking about people just filling out your. So let's go over here, try to make this more clear for myself and for everybody else. So on the Investment Dominator, you've got an opt-in page. Okay. So we'll go to the opt-in page real quick. So if you're talking about people, not real people, filling out this form and going there, that, by the way, is an issue with a lot of, I mean, that's an that's a digital marketing issue. I will tell you that there's a reason why we don't put a CAPTCHA here. And like the CAPTCHAs are the things that we do on the, for example, your buying site. When somebody sends in a question, like on your contact us form, we have a CAPTCHA where it says, "I'm not a robot," right? That prevents people or robots or web bots from filling out this form and sending you spam. Okay. So if you do get spam through this form, it's usually done by a VA or something like that, like a real life person getting past this robot. On the on this end of things, on the selling side, on the opt-in page, we don't put the CAPTCHA there on purpose because it's an internet marketing thing. If you do that, then your percentages of actual people not filling it out will go down. And we also don't really care, to answer your question, if we get junk buyers through there, because the way that we're following up with this is this is not a buyer, this is a prospect. So the way that we handle prospects is that we put them into an email marketing campaign, like I talked about earlier. So like and that's what's covered in this video right here. I actually go through the tutorial on how to set that up. But basically, there's an email marketing campaign where it's like, okay, here's what we offer. Thanks for signing up. Here's some deals. It's driving people back to our selling site. And we typically have, anywhere from 7 emails in that sequence to seven emails for one each day or one every other day for the first couple of weeks. And then we go into like a newsletter type scenario where we try to get one out every week or so. But all it is a nurture campaign. to get people back to your selling site. So we want as many people to fill this out, real people. Obviously, we want as many of them, but we also don't want to have any kind of hindrance on them, like a CAPTCHA for a real person, because real people actually don't even like CAPTCHAs. So we don't want to put that in there as a restriction. In turn, that's going to allow some bots to come through. Now, I will say we are preventing one thing from happening here on a technical level. There is, even though we don't have a CAPTCHA here, we do have we have another, like it's called a honeypot field in there, which does prevent a lot of it. So even though you're seeing some of these fake prospects come through, there's actually a lot more that are being prevented through that honeypot field that you don't see here. But anyways, so just to say, we try to prevent it without hindering the experience of an actual real life person. Let me put it that way. But on your end as a business owner, I think how you need to handle that is just put them in a nurture sequence. I mean, these are not people that you directly reach out to. The people that are calling you on the phone and things like that, you should be using this option right here under your buyers list, which is the new prospect option. This is what you should be filling out. This is different than what we're trying to do with building a buyers list rapidly. Okay, with the building a buyers list rapidly, your sole goal is to get as many prospects into your buyers list from these other places, like LandWatch and things like that. But that are not involving like a conversation with you. They're just like hands-off type interactions. Getting as many of those people into your buyers list so that they can get your emails, so that they can then go back to your website and then call you and have an actual conversation. And in that case, then you're going to be using the new prospect fields to interact with the people. And so it's kind of like the sales funnel concept. Like the top of your funnel is huge, right? You allow a lot of people into the top end of that funnel, and then as they become more filtered down, you're dealing with like the few that end up at the bottom of the funnel. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it's more of like a overall structure thing. Like, don't pay too much attention to those people. If you know that they're fake, you can just delete them. But we would just let them build up in there, and then based on the people that click on our emails, like engage in our emails, those are the ones that we then keep, in like. Let me say one other thing. Like, if we send somebody 50 emails and they never click on one of our emails, then we also know that they are not a real person, or if they are a real person, we don't want them in our list anyways. So those people we will, purge out of the system. But that's not done on the front end. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see here. So you had a follow-up question, Cesar. So when you go to your buyers section in the Investment Dominator, do you delete the buyers who don't leave a name or a phone number? No, we don't. As long as there's an email address, we keep them in there, because again, in the beginning, the prospect people are just getting emails. So the whole goal is to get their phone number and their last name and all that kind of stuff, but we don't usually get that unless we talk to them on the phone. So it's very much a nurture concept. Like, nurture your prospects, follow up with your leads, and close your leads. But by the way, I mean, just overall on a concept level, that's exactly what we're doing when we buy a piece of land too. We're front loading the prospects in the beginning and making it super easy to deal with just by sending out a letter. And then we're focusing all of our effort on the people that actually call in. And then we're even focusing more of our effort on the people that accept their offer. And everybody else just kind of is in this is in the top end of the funnel, right? They're just kind of sitting there until they decide that they want to interact with us. Somebody that we sent a letter to last year, they can just sit there, until they pick up the phone and call us. Or the next year when we mail to them, we send them another letter, then they call us then. But either way, we don't really necessarily pay too much attention to them until they do something. And it's the same thing on the selling side. We don't pay too much attention to them We let them sit there. We nurture them, but all automated, all through email software and things like that. And we only spend our effort on the people that want to engage with us. Okay, so let's see. I think I might have skipped a question up further up. Let me see. Let me go back a little bit and see if I did. I thought somebody sent in a question. Okay, when buyer, let's see. Okay, so Gene asked, when I go to the buyers, my buyer's site, where buyers come in to look, and I click on the contact us, at the bottom of the page, it defaults to get a cash offer for your land. How can I get my buyer phone number to show up there instead of my other selling site number? Okay, that's interesting. Let me just see what you're talking about first, because that shouldn't be the case, but let's see. So on your buyer site, so let's go to our buyer site, the phone number on the contact us page. So you're saying that there's a phone number, this phone number is your selling site phone number, or you're saying that there's something on your footer that has a phone number? Let me go back to the question real quick. How do you get a cash offer for your land? Yeah, oh, maybe it's this one. There's a phone number. No, I'm not really sure, but I'll just answer it generally speaking. To control the footer, right? I think that's what you're talking about, is the footer, the bottom of the page. In my mind, that's the footer. But under customize, you go to website settings, buying, and then down below you have the different options that you can, change the content on. But at the very bottom, there's one called the footer. That actually controls what shows up at the bottom of your site. So like if you at the bottom of your site, this is a footer. If you want to change something there, like add something here, then you just add it there, save it, refresh it on the front end, and you can see it added it here. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about. If you're talking about this number over here, this number right here comes from customize and then company information. It comes from this number. Okay, so that's where you can change it in the system. You can also, by the way, there's something called a company notes. This, whatever you put under company notes is going to show up right here. Okay, so if it's showing up below this number, then that's where you're going to find it in the system. So let's see, did you send in a follow-up? No, you didn't send a follow-up, but if that didn't answer your question, let me know, because I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there. In regards to your selling site number is this number right here. Okay, that one should not appear on your buying site at all. It should only appear on your selling site. And by the way, if you just have this set as blank, it's going to pull the default number, which is your company phone number. So if you don't have a separate phone number for your selling site, it'll just pull from up here. Okay, so anyways, I'll move on. If you have a follow-up question to that, let me know. Let's see here. So if the county entered the owner's address using abbreviations for one property and then the full address for a second property with the same owner, does the ID does the ID know the difference? No. Paul, that goes back to your question about how it matches up, how we determine whether something is a duplicate or not. We're literally doing the same check as you would do in Excel by checking the address, city, state, and zip. So if the value of the state is an abbreviation in your first list, but then it's the full name of the state in the second list, the system does not make that assumption that it's the same address. That, we possibly could do that in the future. You can add that as a feature request, but it does not do that at this time. So you have to literally process your list in the same way. And that's what we do. We just have an exact format that we follow. And if it's all abbreviations that we follow, we just convert that in the import data file, in the Excel file, prior to us importing it into the Investment Dominator. So it's an exact match. The same thing, by the way, with the APN number, because I get that question sometimes. Sometimes you have an APN number that looks like this right here, 123-123-123. Okay, that might be an APN number, and then you could have all of a sudden the county change, or let's say that Agent Pro gives you the APN like this. But then the next time you go into that county, you use a different source. Like you go and get the list from Report All USA or List Source or something like that, and they might have that same APN like this. You got to be aware of that kind of stuff, because it's not going to make an assumption that those are the same properties. It'll just say that these are different properties. Okay. So it is important that import lists are formatted always the same. It doesn't matter if you have dashes in it or not. It's just whatever format you choose, just kind of be consistent with that moving forward. Okay, so let's see here. No, I think because I skipped it around a little bit. So county, nope, I answered that question. Does the ID provide a way to identify people who have contacted, email, or cell, and they say, do not contact me? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So from time to time, it's kind of funny, but yeah, time to time, you do get people that are just irate when they get on the phone. They're just like, how did you get my information? Even though it's public knowledge and all that kind of stuff, and you can't calm them down. And they're like, I want to get taken off the list. Well, the funny answer to that is they are on a public list, so they can't be taken off that public list. But you can, just as a courtesy, tell them that you won't send them a letter again. And out of like thousands of mailings, you're talking about like 1 or 2 people that get to that point anyway. There's very few. But when you do get to that point, the question is, how do you mark them in the system so you don't send them a letter or email or whatever? So there's two ways. If we're talking about the people that we send letters to, the landowners, which is what I'm talking about, what we do is, number one, you do want to keep them in the system. People make the mistake of deleting that record, but if you think about it, if you delete the record, then you have the chance of re-importing that same person again in the future, right? Because there's nothing to reference it against. So let's say that you mail, mail to a county in January, and then you get that irate person that says, don't ever mail to me again. If you delete them out of the system, then come September when you mail again, let's say, you can just re-upload that same person and send them a letter, and then they're just going to call you back and say, how come you sent me 2 letters when I told you not to? Ask me how I know that. It's only happened once. But the way to prevent that is keep the record in the system, number one. Number 2 is change the status. So when you're changing the status, you can change the status as filed filed close, or I think we answered this question one time in one of the classes. We actually have it in here. There's something called do not call. You will not see this in your app because this is something we added as a custom status, but that's the other way to do it. You can either mark it as file closed, which is actually what we do. We keep it in there as file closed, because file closed means that pretty much every function in the system is going to ignore it, except for that importing function. It'll still be in the system, so when you try to import that new record, it'll say it already exists as file closed. So that's what we use. But the other way to do it is actually create a custom status and then index the person under that custom status. So if you don't know about custom statuses, you go under customize, and then you go under statuses and custom stages and statuses, and then you add a status, and you can call that new status whatever you want. In this case, do not call, and then you would just mark the records over into that. But again, the way that we do it is we use file closed. So that's one way. Now, the other way, if it's an email, usually when we're dealing with emails, we're dealing on the buyer's list side. So that's the only time I've seen it there. On the buyer's list side, we do have a field in here called phone status, for example, and you could put do not call there. we also have cell status for the same reason, and then email status for the same reason. Now, I will tell you that these fields exist in there, but they don't really have that much functionality. Although the email status, we do have an internal functionality if somebody uh, clicks on the unsubscribe link in one of our notifications, then it will internally remove them. It will update the email status. But as far as it looks here, as far as like as it appears to you guys, it's almost like functions like a note field for you. So hopefully that answers your questions. It is 1 o'clock, and I think we have 2 more questions. So I'm going to answer those super quick, and we're going to get off. You guys had a lot of questions today. That's good. Let's see. Scott is asking, well, can we look at the webinars from say March to April to find when to find specific calls? Okay, so you're talking about, I think, replays for these Q&A calls. Good question. These are all done under, you go to help. First of all, you register for the call under this section, under the weekly live Q&A call training. You can register for both of the sessions, but right below that is the link to the replays, okay? You go there, you go to the replays here. These are all the replays, and you can search by date and whatever, but that's how you access the replays. Also, these are on YouTube as well, and one thing that you can do, so you can see on our user guide site, we have the timestamp of when we talked about certain things, so you can skip ahead. But if you bring it up on YouTube instead of in our site, so like I just click on YouTube and bring this up. Let me shut this one off. The cool feature about YouTube is that in the description.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
I pause that. But in the description field, you can actually click on the timestamps and go to that actual section. So that's kind of a time saver instead of you scrubbing through trying to figure out which area to get to. So that's hopefully that answered your question, Scott. Let's see. Paul had a comment about irate people calling in. That's funny. Yep, there are people like that. You just kind of like, obviously they're always right. So you just mark them as file close and move on with your day. All right, I think we got to all the questions as far as I can tell. If we didn't get to your, I think we got all the questions, so I think we're good. The next call is going to be on Monday. I think it's at 5 o'clock. Sorry, it's 3 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Sorry about that. I normally do not do these calls, so you'll see Warren on this call. He's awesome at it. And until next time, guys, we'll see you later. If you have any questions in the meantime, fill out under the help section, create a new support ticket, and that goes to us on the back end. And if you have a feature suggestion, fill out the feature suggestion box here. Until then, we'll see you on the next call. Thanks, guys.